5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Start, please.
Culture Salam, and welcome to this evening's event, The Women's Voice, Experiencing Barriers to Inclusivity in Social Justice and Political Forums, which is convened in commemoration of International Women's Day 2021, with my thanks and respect to our hosts, Salam for Democracy and Human Rights, and Sentinel, and to the partners who have made this platform possible. Salutations to all of the women here involved in our discussion and those of the sisters joining us on our online platforms. My greetings also to the many men who will join the audience, some of whom are more conscientious feminists than perhaps I am myself. My name is Tara Raynor O'Grady, and I come from a clan of strong, determined women. I'm a daughter, sister, wife, mother, and an international human rights defender based in Ireland. During my years of work in human rights and social justice, I have met extraordinary women and men around the world who are motivated by a mutual desire to improve the lives of others, to speak out against injustice, and to defend those who are diminished by authorities or dictatorial regimes through cruel and inhumane treatment. I have witnessed people struggling and surviving and succeeding, despite all efforts to silence them or force them into quiet complicity. In full confidence, we must acknowledge that we are currently enduring the most extraordinary time in human memory. The pandemic has pushed women back into their homes, into their kitchens, and into their bedrooms more effectively than any efforts of patriarchy. Thus, our gathering this evening was inspired by the shrinking democratic space and the need to listen to women who are not often heard in halls of power. I applaud the bravery of our participants, mindful that already some have been intimidated in advance of their engagement tonight, whether they have been labelled traitors against their country online or their lives have been threatened because they are refusing to bow the head and be silent, and are instead directing a spotlight on their grievances. During their contribution, each of our participants will mention their own challenges and the current situation in their community or country, and will highlight the most pressing areas of immediate concern. They will explore the question of access to fair justice and how the authorities react to the pressure of criticism, and how we, broadly civil society, might actually help in practical terms, as we are aware that oral solidarity is insufficiently translated on the ground, and many women who sympathise are frustrated that they cannot do more to act and are asking how. Our event will take place in two moderated halves, with each speaker providing opening commentary followed by roundtable discussion. At the close of the discussion, we will open for questions and answers from attendees and the audience. Please be mindful that while we are using English for our event, that this is not the native language of most of our speakers. We realize that it may be challenging to fully express themselves with a confident voice, and we are grateful for their generous efforts to communicate and help us to understand their work. To introduce my colleagues and the running order, the first panel will be moderated by myself, and Sheila Dixon will be moderating the second panel. Sheila is a mother, grandmother, partner of Dennis, nurse, feminist, and activist living in Killarney, County Kerry. She's been actively involved in the Irish Nurses and Midwives organisation for over 20 years as a local representative, branch officer, executive council member, staff member, and held the office of president from 2008 to 2012. She is a committed and active feminist and served on the board of the National Women's Council of Ireland, holding the position of deputy chairperson from 2014 to 2018. She has extensive experience in the community and voluntary sector, having previously served as deputy mayor of Killarney Town and member of the board of the Irish Sports Council. She is a peace commissioner, a member of Killarney Twinning Committee, and vice chairperson of the Dr. Crokes GAA Club. I have known Sheila since working together back in 2011, when we mobilised together to advocate for the release of the 48 medics who were arrested, tortured, made to sign false confessions, and were imprisoned in Bahrain during the Pearl Revolution for upholding the Hippocratic Oath and treating people indiscriminately. I'd like to call the event to session and to introduce my panel of participants. First, I would like to welcome Kim Sharif from Yemen. Kim is a solicitor and human rights campaigner who has been working on the Yemen file from the start. Originally from South Yemen ancestry, Kim has lived in 3 continents and speaks several languages. Kim is the UN representative designate for Yemen and the Foreign Affairs Officer for South Yemen Peace and Conciliation Association. Secondly, I welcome Mrs. Meima Sa from Western Sahara and the Sahrawi peoples. Umaima Abdul Salam is a Polisario Front activist. She currently acts as their representative to Switzerland, the United Nations, and the international organizations in Geneva. She is an advocate for the promotion of Sahrawi women to access better political participation. Additionally, Abdul Salam is an engineer in telecommunications and electronics and speaks 4 languages. Mrs. Fatma Ali from Bahrain. Fatma Ali is a women's human rights defender. She attended Bahrain Polytechnic and was there during the pro-revolution when regime forces attacked students and teachers. She married and became a teacher herself, but was fired when she became pregnant. Lastly on my panel is Ms. Mariam Kessawan. She's a human resources business consultant, a women's human rights defender, and activist for social justice. She was a member of the founding committee of the You Stink movement against the trash crisis that took place in Lebanon in 2015. And in October 2019, she was one of the key participants in the Lebanese uprising. She founded the hashtag Lebanon Uprising platforms on social media. So without further ado, Kim, I would like to ask you to take the podium and make a presentation to the floor, please. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so much for this event, which is absolutely delightful opportunity for all of us to get together and speak about one of the most pressing issues in the world today, which is us, womankind, from all over the world. Today, we are experiencing problems on many different levels, and nowhere else do I see the issue of women's rights more pressing than what's happening in Yemen. As you know, Yemen has been designated the world's worst humanitarian catastrophe, albeit man-made one. I'll just give you a brief picture of the situation there in Yemen today. In the south, women routinely get raped by forces known for using rape as a weapon of war in the south of Sudan, namely the Janjaweeds, who have been hired by the Saudi-led coalition to run amok in the southern parts, which are occupied by Saudi-led coalition and their militias. They routinely get subjected to harassment by Al-Qaeda and Aqab type Daesh type terrorists. 2 judges have had to leave Aden, and they are my colleagues, one based in the UK, another based in Sweden, who gave me a full picture of what's really happening on the ground there. And it's very, very distressing, to say the least. These women are professional women, lawyers, judges in Aden, so they have had to leave their country because of routine harassment from these elements. Of course, we know Saudi coalition countries, for example, they are not good with matters of respecting women's rights. I mean, we know about cases of Lujain Hadlul, for example, in Saudi Arabia, and many more women, Manal Sharif, many more women remain in custody and they get subjected to sexual assault there. We also know about Princess Shamsa, who has disappeared, and there are calls for investigation about her disappearance. This is the United Arab Emirates. And we also know Princess Latifa remains in custody. We don't know what's happened to her since her last revelation. So these are the nations that are controlling the southern parts of Yemen and subjecting women to most horrific kinds of torture, rape, and death. In the north, women are bombed in their homes, in hospitals, in schools, and markets, streets. There is really no place safe for women. They're not allowed to travel abroad because the airport has been closed illegally. Women are being starved to death and their children. Up to 50,000 children per annum die, and these mothers must be in a state that is very, very difficult to actually understand, to watch your own child under the age of 5 die of hunger and preventable diseases, entirely attributable to the actions of the Saudi-led coalition by detaining cargo ships that carry food, fuel, and medicine. And the international community is basically not saying much about that. In the Marib area and the Jof area, women get kidnapped and trafficked to the Saudi regime to be kept there as hostages. Last couple of weeks, 8 women were brutally kidnapped from their homes, pulled, and one of them was tortured to death in custody. Another one just gave birth 2 weeks earlier and wasn't allowed to take her baby with her. We don't know the fate of these women now, and we understand from reports from the ground in Yemen, they have been trafficked to Saudi Arabia to be kept as hostages for negotiations later. Likewise, there's a lady called Samira Marsh, kidnapped in Al Jawf, also trafficked onto the Saudi regime, and we are calling for her immediate release. The voices of Yemeni women, as I have just briefly described, is not heard because there is colonial agenda superimposed on what constitutes women's rights and what is required for the purposes of capacity building, empowerment, sustainable development, all those nice fancy things that we all love to see happen on the ground, as you know. The problem is that the colonial agenda often focuses entirely on the sexuality of the women, and mainly Muslim Arab women. FGM, forced marriages, hijab. These are the subjects that they are told to discuss and deal with. Funding, etc., is always available for these things, but nothing else. And today, the latest item on the colonial agenda is child brides, and that's become like so hot to the point that a lot of women who are allied to the Saudi-led coalition, who get paid a lot of money, and they are professional women who should know better than that, but come out and give misleading information and picture about what's happening in Yemen to the eminent experts, for example, making false accusations about Houthis, distorting the reality, and basically carrying out colonial propaganda agenda in that way. And as if women's rights and liberties is totally exclusively connected with her sexuality and nothing else. Right to life, etc., is forgotten. Now, here in the UK, briefly, I'll show you what I have been also looking into. I've always been interested in women's rights myself, come from 3 generations of formidable southern Yemen women who didn't need men to slaughter their own chicken when it came to cooking. I will say something about Sienna Miller, which really moved me the last couple of weeks, reported in The Guardian. She said, when I walk in there, I walk in there as a man. When I go in and negotiate, I go there as a man. I was very saddened to hear her say that. She went on to say that it was not just it was just rampant patriarchy rearing its head again. And this is the UK, where we are also having to deal with things like Samira Ahmed, Kerry Gracie, who have had to fight viciously to get the equal pay at the BBC. Now, let me tell you who we are as Arab Muslim women, specifically from the Yemen. We are women who come from the land of Sheba. Twice Yemen was ruled by women. So on the political level, we have got the expertise, the experience, the will, and the ability to do it. And our men know that very well, and they can't deny it, and they don't deny it. So in politics, Yemen was ruled thousands of years ago by a woman called Sheba, and she commanded a formidable army. Likewise, Queen Arwa, this was the time when Europe was in the dark ages. Yemen was being ruled by a formidable queen. Economically, politically, was doing absolutely smashing job. Let me show you where we get our inspirations then. In politics, as I just said, we get it from Sheba and Arwa. In human rights, we get it from a lady called Asia bint Muzahem. This lady was the first human rights activist campaigner for minority rights in Egypt during the days of Pharaoh. She was supporting Moses, peace be upon him, and his crowd. And she was defending him vociferously against Pharaoh. She was tortured to death. Asia bint Muzahem is hardly ever mentioned in Western literature. I am grateful for this opportunity to be able to talk about the first human rights campaigner in history, who we respect and revere. And then we have the all beautiful, magnificent Mary, peace be upon her. She gives us inspiration for fortitude and virtue. Today's Saudi coalition militia campaigners, if they were to know about the story of Mary, they would have campaigned for a right for abortion. That is how far they have gone the wrong conspiratorial line of perpetuating colonial agenda. And then in economics, we have the formidable lady Khadija, peace be upon her, wife of our Prophet salawatullahi alayhi wa ala ali. And this lady was economically so powerful. She was hiring men all over the place and doing amazingly well. It was her money that was used to propagate Islam. And she proposed to the Prophet himself and married him. So she was not a woman. She was a woman in her own right. And then we go on from economics, we move, and this was like dark ages in Europe, I'm talking here. We move on to legal advocacy. Legal advocacy, we get it from Lady Fatima Zahra, peace be upon her, the daughter of Prophet Muhammad, and Khadija, the economic mighty lady. Lady Fatima teaches us how to eloquently advocate and fight for your right. She was fighting for her heritage in a land known as Fadak in front of all the men in Medina after the demise of her father, peace be upon him. She gave the most moving speech in history, closing speech of any. She's the best advocate in my eyes, and I am very inspired by her, and that's what helps me keep going in my job as a solicitor, notwithstanding what's happening. Everybody who heard that speech cried, and I recommend to everyone to read that speech to get strength and power to move forward for all women. It's not just for Muslim women, for all women. And then we move on to public relations. We have our lady Zainab, peace be upon her, daughter of Fatima Zahra and Ali bin Abi Talib. Zainab was the most amazing public relation consultant who did an amazing job in Karbala and elsewhere to defend the rights of her brother, her imam. And without her public relations skills, the story of Karbala could well have been buried under the ground and we wouldn't have known it today. And so we get inspiration from, she had no fear of the men. She stood up in Karbala in front of the sword and she said, you have to kill me before you touch my imam. And she was protecting Imam Zain al-Abidin, peace be upon him, there in Karbala after everyone else was butchered to death. So with these mighty examples in mind, I urge you, my friends in the West, stay away from the colonial agenda of FGM, forced marriage, and hijab. These are not the issues. We feel the pain of women everywhere in the world as much as we feel our own pain back at home. Yes, our women need capacity building. Yes, there is a lot of room for improvement and development. There's room for empowerment. There's room for sustainable development, but no to colonial agendas and no to whitewashing Saudi crimes of trafficking our women, raping our women, killing them everywhere. The biggest barrier I face myself personally as a woman in my own right in the UK is that colonial agenda as well, still with the perception. For example, when I go inside a court with my hijab on, judges and everyone else think I am the defendant or the litigant rather than the advocate who is there to do a job. And when they realize that I am the advocate, they spend another half an hour trying to pronounce my surname, which is very easy, Kim Sharif, Omar Sharif. I've had to change my Arabic name in the first place to get into the profession. And this profession has been riddled with all kinds of thorns. And only God knows how I survived. I survived because I'm inspired by these great ladies in history. What I say to my sister, Sienna Miller, Samira Ahmed, and all other women out there, don't go in there as a man. You are good enough as a woman. You can go in there. You can get inspiration and strength and will to stand with fortitude by reading about the lives of these other women who have been buried under the carpet by colonial agendas. These women were around in the dark ages and they were doing remarkable work. We need to get them back into the scene and be inspired by them and move forward. I urge you, my sisters all over the world, to have regard to the needs of the women of Yemen. There's a lot of work to be done. I am involved in self-sufficiency programs. Anyone who wants to support me in these programs, I'd be most grateful indeed. And I can go on talking about this issue for infinite time, but unfortunately, I think time is pressed. This is what I had to say for now, and I do hope that what I have said about what's happening in Yemen is very important insofar as you focus on what's actually happening to Yemeni women at the hands of these brutal dictators who have no respect for women whatsoever. in their own countries and cage them inside cages inside the palaces of the Emirati rulers. They rape them inside prisons. And of course, subjecting our southern women, southern parts of Yemen are occupied by Saudi-led coalition. And yet they come back and pay these women to go and tell pack of lies to UN experts about alleged crimes of Houthis, which don't exist. I've been working on the Yemen file for the past 6 years. I am of Yemeni origin myself. I work with both sides, and I know exactly what's going on. I don't take claims as they come. I use my legal skills to investigate and find out, get to the bottom of the issues. Every allegation I have been put to me about the Houthis, I've investigated them thoroughly and found them to be completely false. If you don't agree with me, then call for an independent international investigation, not a bunch of experts who are not allowed to get into Yemen because Saudi coalition refused them entry into the parts they are controlling. They've only entered our parts, and their report was based entirely on the false claims made by these women whose job is basically to perpetuate the colonial agenda of FGM, forced marriages, hijabs, and child bride. These are not our issues. Bombs landing in homes are our issues. Bombs landing in hospitals, in markets, in streets, everywhere. Women are being tortured in ways that is hard to describe anymore. Thank you so much for this time, and hopefully I have made the representation required for Yemen.
Thank you so much, Kim, for your intervention. And really, I think if we were standing together in a hall, you would be met with a resounding applause for that. Thank you so much. I will move forward. We will have time for questions later, Kim. I know that there are some people who will want to come back to you. Our second speaker is Omema Sa from Western Sahara. And if you would like to take the floor, please, Omema, we welcome you.
Thank you very much. It's really a challenge to take the floor after Kim Sharif. Please, Abbas, can you prepare the videos? Meanwhile, he's preparing the videos. I want to present myself. I am Omema Abdeslam Najim Mahmoud Abdeslam, coming from Western Sahara. Western Sahara, for the one who don't know, it's a non-self-governing territory pending of the colonization. Exactly, it's a remnant of colonization that it has stayed in Africa for the last 15 years. As you know, Western Sahara is located in the north of Africa, between Morocco and Mauritania. Right now, it's partially occupied by Morocco. I let you see the videos. Please put the video.
The extremely deployment of the occupied. The extremely deployment of the occupying forces have succeeded in preventing large-scale protests in the city. Nevertheless, the Sahrawi Clandestine Female Activists Committee organized demonstrations around the city to mark International Women's Day.
أعلام الجمهورية العربية الصحراوية الديمقراطية مطالبة بالاستقلال ولا شيء غير الاستقلال.
During their march, protesters sang patriotic songs, chanted political slogans, waved the Sadr flag, distributing leaflets calling for self-determination and independence, and expressed solidarity and support with Sultana Khayyan Mohammed Lamin Hadi. They also criticized the United Nations for failing to protect Sahrawis. Sahrawi activists still believed in asserting their legitimate claims by peaceful means. while Morocco is grievously destabilizing for the region by an escalation of military aggression and intensification of political repression against Sahrawi activists and vulnerable and disadvantaged groups.
We have another video, maybe it's 45 seconds, because for me it's very important to show you some videos to explain you how is the situation, the dangerous situation that my people live in and in Western Sahara. I'm not going to be very extensive. I like really to have some kind of interaction with the public. But just to tell you that right now, the situation is very dangerous because of the beginning of the war in Western Sahara. After 13 years of peace process held by the UN has failed to protect the Sahrawi people. The UN has failed to give the Sahrawi people their right to self-determination. Even they are entitled to have this right in the resolutions. And all that is because of France, Spain, and USA. So the question of Western Sahara is not an exception about what's happening in Yemen or other countries. It's just profit. Profit, it's much more important than human rights and the life of the people. My people has been sacrificed because some people like to profit or phosphate and or 1,100 kilometers of coast are much more important for them than the life of the Sahrawi people. Just to show you who are the Sahrawi people. Sahrawi people are descendants of the Muslims who has come from Yemen. That's why my name is Abdeslam, maybe, and we speak Hassaniya. So Hassaniya is one of the languages, most older languages of the Arab world. We understand everybody and no one understands us. It's very close to the classic Arabic. In Western Sahara, the women are very well respected. We don't know in our society what it is, the violence against women. In Western Sahara, the women have a very important role in the family and in the society. That's why we don't have no help from the Arab world. We are rejected from the Arab world because for us, for them, we are very progressive. In Western Sahara, when a woman is divorced, we make a party. And the women who are divorced are much more likely to get married than the ones who are virgins. In Western Sahara, we don't check for virginity. In Western Sahara, the woman has a very important role in society. Right now, there is Sahrawis who are divided in three parts. There is the part who are in occupied territory with the pictures I just showed you. And I kindly ask Abbas to prepare another video because I want to show you and speak to you about how the Sahara women are treated by the occupier of Morocco in Western Sahara. This video, please.
حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل 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 حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل.
So the occupier of Morocco is a Muslim country that's supposed to have some kind of respect of women, but they torture the Sahrawi people because the Sahrawi people are rejecting the occupation and they want to have a free land. It's not because we want to have a free land. We are entitled to have this free land. In Western Sahara, people has been kidnapped, has been tortured, has been disappeared, has been using the torture to against women and against everybody just to prevent them to be voice, to have a voice for this freedom. In Western Sahara, the Sahrawi citizens are treated as second class in their own land. They don't have right to associate. They don't have right to free speech. They don't have right to make business. And always there is this big watch. You feel that you are observed in somehow. So Morocco also has changed the demography of Sahrawi people by injecting in our territory thousands of settlers that has nothing to do with our culture, that has nothing to do with our life. When I said settlers, I said women and men. I have nothing against the Moroccans, but there is no Morocco that has been born in 75, before 75, when they came in the Green March. For them, the Green March is some kind of liberation. For us, it's a genocide. Because when they came to our land, they have buried the people alive. They have killed our people. They have mistreated our people, only to take our land. And because of this invasion, the Sahara people has moved to exile in Algeria. Right now in Algeria, we have the biggest camp, refugee camp, and the oldest one. I know that Palestinians are older, but Palestinians, they have their own agency, which is UNRWA. In Western Sahara, we are under UNHCR. There is 173,000 refugees who are organized in the camp. No one can hear something about this camp because the people there in this camp are very dignified. We are not refugees of hunger. We are refugees of dignity. We are looking for independence, for our independence. And in this refugee camp, this state in exile has been constructed by women. In Western Sahara, 80% of the education system is women. 90% in health system is women. And also we have parliamentarians. We have a lot of women who are very actively, politically participating. Myself, I have been abroad studying in Cuba for 13 years, and then I came back to the refugee camp, and I run a school for women when we teach them how to be economically developed. And it was an honor for me to be able to cooperate with my people. Tara, you tell me the time. I will speak just a little bit about the question of Western Sahara.
Go ahead, Maima. Go ahead. No problem, yeah.
The question of Western Sahara is a question of decolonization. It's a problem that has been created by Europeans when they decided in the 89 to divide Africa and say this part belonged to this and this belonged to this. Western Sahara at that time will belong to Spain. Unfortunately, there is two countries in Africa who belong to Spain, who are Western Sahara and Guinea Equatorial. Both has a big problem. The one who is independent has a problem, and they didn't succeed to give us our right to self-determination. And when they were called in the 16th by the UN to give the Sahrawi right to independence, they have rejected this because they wanted our resources, they wanted our phosphate. So they make an illegal treaty with Morocco or Mauritania, and they give them the land, and the profit was always for Spain. So since this unfortunate 75, Spain has been a problem for the colonization in Western Sahara. And it has been worsened when the question of Western Sahara has become to the UN, because France has become also a big stone for the Sahrawi people to get independence. Just to remind you that the question of decolonization, it's a responsibility of all over the world. All the countries has a responsibility to decolonize and to make freedom for the people who are colonized. Unfortunately, in our case, the problem is still impatient to be solved by Spain, France, and USA. And these countries are the one actually ready right now that are blocking any kind of success to this process. My people, who are a very peaceful people, after 13 years of peace process, they were obliged to take the war again, the 13th November 2020, to continue the struggle for independence. We will not stop until get our independence or die. So Western Sahara is just another case that we will hear tonight about the will of the people to be challenged. So Sahara people, we want to be independent. We want respect for our culture, to respect especially for the value of the women in our country that we are not going to have in any other country under any other kind of sovereignty. But the Sahara people and the Frente Polisario, who I am represent, are for any decision that Sahara people choose, even to be part of Morocco or to be independent. We will respect this decision. But the consultation must be made so that we can rest and finish this conflict at the end.
Thank you very much, Umaima. We certainly have a lot to learn from you. I will hand over now to Mrs. Fatma Ali. This is on the situation in Bahrain. Fatma, welcome to our session. You just need to unmute your microphone, please.
Hello, thank you for having me. And as a Bahraini woman, I give my respect to all the women around the world who they are fighting and struggling against the abuses and the injustice and to protect their kids and their family. During the uprising in the 90s, there was no media coverage in Bahrain. The voices couldn't be heard. I was a child in that time. My family was trying to protect us from all harms or even the bad news. It was all evaporated when the riot police raided our home early morning without a warrant. They pointed a gun at my pregnant mother. My father felt helpless. I saw the fear in his eyes. He asked us not to move. I woke up to see masked men with guns in front of me. My father died after a while from shock. He didn't recover after that night, neither did I. The situation was apparently fine after a couple of years. Obviously, it wasn't enough, and we need major and bigger steps of reforms. When the government fails to protect a pregnant woman who's trying to reach a hospital, this is a big failure. That's what happened to my sister in 2007, when the riot police blocked the way and they refused to let us pass through, even after we told them it's an emergency. We ran out of time and we barely made it after taking a hard way. The incidents repeated over and over, and even worse, with worse scenarios even after 2011. The main hospital in the country was under military siege. The resident areas, the villages were covered with tear gas clouds almost every night. And it gets bad when the weather is humid. We couldn't breathe. Many miscarriages happened after suffocated from tear gas. I have who's suffering from asthma, and she felt dying many times because the tear gas covered her home. I have a cousin who was completely normal and successful young man. He had a psychological problem after 2011 because he couldn't take it all. Of that, it was just hard on him. Pills didn't help. I feel sorry for him because he couldn't be strong. The University of Bahrain also was under siege after thugs attacked on students. And even after they reopened, they put checkpoints everywhere, police everywhere. I couldn't go to college after the day of the attack. It wasn't safe. A whole year I stayed home breathing tear gas at night and following the news of arresting people, human rights activists, women, children, prisoners were being killed under torture, school being closed, people stayed at home, and I stayed home worried how I'm going to finish my studies in the university. It wasn't my last concern. I just wanted to be safe, me, my family, and other people too. I did finish my degree later and got a job in the private sector, which you can find it really challenging, especially if you are a mother or mother-to-be. The school principal forced us to stay after working time if he wanted for workshops or meetings, and he could simply send us an email informing us what he wants. We couldn't leave, and if we tried, he will embarrass us sometimes. But I faced that because I needed to leave to pick up my baby, and other teachers had the same issue too. They make it really hard for the mother to work, or even the pregnant woman. They can just make it harder until you resign or get fired. I got fired when I was pregnant and I had some complications. with my pregnancy. The doctor asked me to have a bed rest, and when I informed school administrations, they just fired me. At the end, I have to mention a brave woman, Zakiya Isa al-Barbouri, the last political woman in prison. She got arrested in May 17, 2018, after raiding on her family home. She was tortured and abused, and they sentenced her to 5 years in jail. Her nationality being dropped, and they gave her back after a royal pardon. We demand her release or accepting the alternative sanctions. We need to solve a lot of issues here in Bahrain, and I'm trying that I give some insights on the situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Fatima, for joining and for being so courageous in joining. We know today there was a resolution made on Bahrain at the European Parliament where they condemned the human rights abuses in the country, and they've been very, very outspoken today, which we applaud. So many efforts on behalf of the people in your country, Fatima. I will now come, if I may, to Mariam Kessawan, who is the final speaker on my panel. Mariam is from Lebanon, and Mariam, if you'd like to take the floor, you're very welcome, please.
Hello, everyone. Hello, ladies. So in Lebanon, the case is a little bit different. It is tough in a new way. In each country, we have three main powers, and which are the party's power, the religion authorities, and the state authority. Unfortunately, we've reached into 2021 a level where there is nearly the same people that are occupying the positions in political parties. Leadership are the same people that are occupying and have in their hands the religious authority and at the same time the state's authority, which allows Lebanon to go back to a Stone Age way of running the country, where religion have a power in each of everyone's lives. And I'm not here to judge religions and to talk about if religions are fair with all the people, if religions are fair to women just like men. I am not a person of religion, but what I know for sure it's that not each citizen, not each Lebanese citizen is being treated fairly in everything, because states were made for people to feel, for diversity to be accepted, for our differences to be accepted, and for us to be treated fairly as citizens, regardless our religious belonging and regardless of our religious practices degree. So religion has come to a point where in Lebanon, these three powers are handled in one hand. And allow me to mention that I come from the Shiite sect in Lebanon, since Lebanon is made of 18 religions and it contains all of them. Instead of accepting our differences, we were played in a way as a population for these differences to be quotas for the religious institution. And as we know that when we are quota, we are directly controlled, especially when it comes to personal status laws. We are currently ruled by one of the organizations that were labeled as terrorist organizations, and these organizations are known to be masculine. Women have no right to talk freely, to express freely, and the worst thing is that in every political position in Lebanon was ruled by men, and we're talking about a while of 30 years where the member of parliament that should be 128 were mostly made of men, and we're talking about 126, 125, 124 men out of women, which led, combining this with the personal status law, the women in Lebanon are not being able to participate in running the country and managing the country. The corruption that is happening in Lebanon so far is mainly and primarily women-free. It's guilt-free for women, and they haven't tried yet. During this uprising, I've been taking a role. Although I was very discreet, I didn't show my face as much as I should, and I wasn't free to be adopting the movements that were done, because the main thing that is happening in Lebanon is all type of violence against women. When we're talking about violence, there's also political violence. And as many of you know, as many of the speakers here, I guess they share the same culture. Whenever you want to get free in your movements, in your mobilization, you have to have at least support around you for you to be public. What I've been facing lately is all kind of accusation and treason, that I belong to the Zionist forum, and the slut shaming that I've been facing is something that is actually alarming. I'm still not running for a candidacy. I'm still not running for anything, and I am bearing a big suffer. So all of this for me, for my humble opinion, was caused by the fact that the religion was collated to the state. Once we do this, we have banned and prevented the chances for a woman to be able to have equal opportunities in many fields that are related to the state. As I've mentioned before, I'm not here to talk about whether the religion is right or not or wrong. I am a strong believer, and I love God in my own way. And even if I am a disbeliever, I have to respect my fellow as the atheist, because he is a citizen. I want to be respected as a woman citizen, regardless of how much I am practicing my religion or not. I'm not talking about whether the religion is right or wrong. I'm not talking about if I'm treated equally in my religion. This is something that should be in the label of religion. However, when I am a citizen of this state, and I don't want to be beaten. I don't want to be beaten by someone, by a man, and for this to be allowed because my religion might tolerate this. I don't want to be stuck in my marriage for years just because my religion imposes this. I don't want to be treated differently than any other citizen in my country because I belong to a religion that has a court that is different to the other citizen in this country. If I am a woman, I want to be treated equally to the men that have had their chances to run the country. If I am a woman, I want to speak and I want to express my political opinion without being ashamed in that way, and for the society to accept the shaming. What I know from my culture is that the road for a woman to speak in Lebanon, it is accepted by many amazing Lebanese people that are believing in the upcoming world, but we are facing a terrorist religious organization that is in power now. As hard as it might sound, I had to move my house. I'm having to stay away from my parents, although my parents also don't share my point of view, but for their own security. And I just accepted that I get shamed, and to accept whatever the fight takes to go to the end in this fight regardless. But we have to speak about our struggles in this fight, and how a woman fighting one of the world's most terrorist organization path is being like.
Thank you very much indeed, Mariam. I think that your voice has certainly been heard. You gave a very balanced and fascinating delivery. Thank you. I have reached the end of the first panel, and I'm very conscious of the time. So I think that rather than having a questions and answer session right now, we might move to the second panel so that we can ensure that all of our speakers have adequate time. Thank you, Sheila. I'll hand over directly to you, please, if I may.
Thanks very much, Tara. That was so inspiring. I'm in awe of the previous speakers, I have to say. Very insightful, educational as well. I'm going to introduce the next panel of speakers. I'm just going to introduce by first name, if that's okay. I don't want to be disingenuous of anyone in case I get their names wrong. So Iman from Kuwait, and also for the displaced people, is a microbiologist and holds an MA in social political science. She's a researcher and writer interested in politics and religious thought, and has written several books on the subject. Anna Corrigan is somebody who I have listened to and watched previously, so I'm delighted to actually have an opportunity to see her face to face and listen in person. Anna's a Dublin native who was one of the earliest and most prominent names fighting for understanding and justice in regards to the Irish mother and baby homes. In 2012, Anne discovered that her parents, William and Bridget, were survivors of the industrial and mother and baby homes, and her story made headlines worldwide and brought much needed attention to the history of mother and baby homes in Ireland, eventually leading to a government inquiry. Later, Anne set up the Tune Baby family group to help survivors and families who have their loved one buried in the pit in Tune. She received the gold medal of honorary patronage of the Trinity College University Philosophical Society. My next speaker will be Anya from India, and she's a 20-year-old student. She's involved with the organization Youth Against Rape and Youths Against Injustice Foundation India. She's currently a member of the General Secretariat of the YAIF and acts as their social media marketing expert. And we're also joined again by Dr. Cindy Joyce. Cindy is a human rights defender and a member of President Michael D. Higgins' Council of State. She was named as one of the 50 brilliant Irish women who inspired us in 2018 by the Daily Edge. She has a BA in history and in English and history, and a master's in sociology. She was the module coordinator and lecturer in Travellers' Rights and Nomadism, and Travellers' Ethnicity and Rights in University College Dublin with the School of Social Policy, Social Work and Social Justice. Her research is varied and it includes both direct and indirect forms of racism, identity, social political constructions of Irish travellers, and the production of space-related inequalities. Cindy was successful in winning the prestigious Irish Research Council Government of Ireland Postgraduate Scholarship Scheme with a top score of 95.5%. We're delighted that she's with us as well as a contributor. And I'm so delighted now to pass over to the very first speaker, Iman.
Hi again, and good evening again. I'm so glad to have this opportunity to express my own opinion and put 3 lines under the own opinion in order to prevent any consequences depend on my opinion. I have 3 approaches to speak about it. First, one is about the nature of our communities, which is the geographical one, where Kuwait is located first in Arab wars and second in Gulf. So society are affected with mixed and complicated historical and ideological traditions and values and inherited manner and behaviors and also commitment. Second one, the controlling of authority by alliance with clergies, which is not in open understanding of religion, but in close mind understanding and mixing between religion and tradition in bad way, like what was happening in Middle Age in Europe, with little differences. This makes changing more difficult and collide with strong barrier against us as a human rights or as a woman activist seeking for changes and reforming. Third one, the most one who be affected with these circumstances are women. They are at the same time the causes and the victims. They are the cause since they accept this situation and are most dissatisfied, and most of them are defending against any trial of change or criticize these situations. And this happens sometimes as a reaction against extremist feminist demands, which cross in shocked way with the society, nature, and satisfaction. So now what are the obstacles we faced usually as a woman here? We're active in trying and changing or reforming the situation. First, about the freedom, still women suffer from being free in her decisions. Of course, there is little progression in compared with before, but after globalization, we still suffer and fight for rational independence, either in legislation legal level or in political level. For example, in elections, the woman can be candidate legally. They can candidate, but till now society culture not helping them, not funding them, and the woman who was elected did not introduce themselves worthily or not be qualified enough or not be respected in parliament. And I will mention why after that, why they are in political issue is not very strong. Also, in freedom of speech level, there are many rules which prevent people to be free in criticizing the interior and exterior policy or of country. And many persons went to jail because of tweets. You know this, and it's famous everywhere that many Twitter are going in jail because of the laws that prevent expressing any criticize against our neighbor's country. So when any father or husband or brother see that, so they did not allow the woman or girls belong to them to interact with politics or public issues. And gradually they isolated from this society, police society, or argument about the politics in the everywhere. Yani we are not. There's it's not like the man where they are discussing the politics issue. They are scaring from scandal and shame if they are arrested in such tradition society because of the law that prevent. They are strict in expressing your opinion, special opinion, especially if you criticize a neighbor country. Second obstacle is discrimination. We suffer so much from discrimination in many ways. First, government, where the women still fighting to lead in many positions and to be partner in planning and decision. And this is also happening in society and in different institutions. And also in political current sense, parties are not legalized in Kuwait till now. Woman who married Kuwaitis, she is not Kuwaitis, but she married Kuwaitis and take Kuwait nationality are also suffer because of her accent. Imagine, because her accent is not Kuwaiti, she is suffering from discrimination. Kuwait society still deal with her as a foreigner and outlander, even if she born and learn and live in Kuwait from she was born. She really can't participate in public movement and social and political activity because of that. Me, for example, facing hardly the situation. Also, another obstacle is from extremist feminists, where they express their reform ideas in a shocked and extreme way, where the society refuses all these ideas, even just this one. And this kind of feminists also facing the rational ideas that are stable part of our identity as mostly because we are mostly in conservative society and need gradual changing and reforming to achieve the purpose of reforming. We should be a voice, not a voice echo. As a woman in a conservative society, we should have our own voice and have our own planning in facing the traditions and trying to change what is not justice for the woman. And any try to shock the society, this will be bad. We will be in bad situation because the society will react in bad way. We are really faced many challenges in such conservative society with such stereotype government, and sometimes our family suffer with us since we are sometimes are exposed to questionings or arresting, or either society bully, or men complaining from our ideas or opinions in our situation from politics or human rights issues in society, or opinion about women's situation to be reformed. I think we should co-op all of us with each other in order to have our own plan and reforming the ideas and reforming the legislations of that dealing with women, but without shock the identity, and especially the basic thing in our identity. This is what I expressed today about what we are suffering in Kuwait society, especially. Thank you so much.
Sheila, you're on mute, I'm afraid.
Apologies. Sorry. Thank you so much, Iman, for giving us that overview. And now I will pass on to Anna.
No, your microphone, Anna.
Hi. Great to be here with everybody. Such august company, such great women, and it's a pleasure to be invited. I'm a 65-year-old grandmother, mother to 2 daughters, and grandmother to 4 children, or grandchildren. And I was born in 1956, and I actually had a lot of time to think here, listening to the ladies expressing their views on political, and it's a place I never really put myself back to the history of my own country. I was born in 1956, and I'm just writing down here, Ireland became a republic in 49. So I was only 7 when Ireland became a republic. We had an uprising, we had 800 years of colonial ruling from Britain, and in 1916 we had an uprising. So that was only 40 years before I was born, and it's really put things into perspective for me tonight, you know, like where I came in at this to a very young state, and the guys who actually fought to free this country from England, they wanted a socialist republic, and where all the people would be treated equally and the children would be cared for. But this didn't happen, because very soon after that, there became an entanglement between church and state. And like your friend from the Lebanon was saying here, the control of both the church and the state came into place. And there was a very toxic relationship between a very misogynistic church and a very patriarchal state. And it worked very badly against women. So I was just looking back here, like being born in 56 and then 10 years on, it was the first time they brought in higher level education for women. So that was the second grade. You got a basic primary education, and up until then, that was all the education you got. There was no contraceptives available. When you got married, you became the property of your husband. You had to leave work. You had to go home and mind your children. If your husband left the country and moved to another country, it became his domicile, and he could look for a divorce there. And he could look for guardianship of the children. He could take your house and leave you on the street. And I'm just now, as I listen to all this, I'm trying to compute all this. Women didn't study maths. Like, I mean, it was very few. Like, I mean, maybe 126. I read from an article tonight, out of 2,000 women went on to do honours maths. So again, they're going forward, their careers were put in jeopardy. So all these things were in place when I was born, and it's funny to actually, we didn't have a woman president. We didn't have women in positions of power regarding, you know, high jobs, or you couldn't even become a bus driver, or you couldn't become a postwoman, or you couldn't become a tradesperson. And I'm kind of saying, wow, that's really what I lived through, but I was quite a radical anyway. So, but we lived in a very misogynistic church, patriarchal state, suffocating environment for women. The normal in the genteel society was that women stayed at home. You had a huge number of children. You were subservient to your husband. You pandered to the political and the religious norms, and you told the party line. But if you stepped outside this, oh, there was another world there, ran in parallel. There was terrible places where women were sent to. And these weren't sent by occupying people. These were sent by our own, because when the occupier left, our own people set up what I would always call something similar to a clerical fascist state, with a very misogynistic and patriarchal undertones against women. But if you played along with the game and you had maybe 15 children, maybe 22, you went to church regularly on a Sunday, you covered your head, you left your work when you got married, you put up with your husband coming home drunk, and you know, you didn't worry about your career or your life. It was all good. You were okay. You could go under the radar. But there was a sinister side going on for women who moved outside the social norms. If you became pregnant outside marriage, you were taken away and you were put into confined in these mother and baby homes with big 10-foot walls. And you were actually sentenced there, and you were looked after by the religious nuns who were paid for by the state to incarcerate you there, to keep you prisoner because you had broken the social norms. If you were a pretty girl, or if you were attracted to men, we had another place we could put you. We had Magdalene homes, more big buildings with big walls. You were put inside there. You were a danger to society. You were a moral kind of immoral, you know, challenge to society. You spent your life in there washing clothes. They cut your hair. They took your name away. They gave you a new name. They took your clothes away. You had to do this day after day. You couldn't communicate with other people who worked there. The free time you did have, you didn't speak. You had to pray. You had to pray for forgiveness for being so beautiful. You had to pray for forgiveness for God knows what reason. The same in the mother and baby homes. They also then had another set of buildings. I'm just trying to give you a picture of it because maybe you don't have them, with a big 10-foot walls again. And if you died and something happened to you, the state came in, they took the children from the husband or the wife, whoever was left. They took the children to court and they sentenced these children to 10 years in this incarceration because their mother died or because their father died. And again, run by the religious, again behind big walls. And again, we're back to this misogynistic church and patriarchal society that women were forced to live in. And that's when you stepped outside. So it didn't matter which side you were on, you had a raw deal. But I found out in 2012 that my mother had been in one of these homes and she had given birth twice. My brother, John, was born in 1946. Now, she came from a small farming background. I don't know how she became pregnant. Was it rape? Was it consensual? Was it incest? I have no idea. So she was incarcerated thrown out by her family, sent to one of these big homes and lived behind these walls. She slaved. They put her through torture when you're having the babies. They won't give you any medication. They won't give you any painkillers. And you stay there for a year and you work hard labor to pay for this privilege of being in there. And then when you leave your child behind because society wouldn't tolerate a woman who wasn't married to take her child out of these places. So a lot of these children were sold by the religious, and either that or they were mistreated. The ones that maybe weren't so good, they were allowed to die because the figures are shocking. There's been an investigation into these homes recently, and these homes are only a selection of the homes. And there's only 14 of possibly maybe 120. And they've discovered that 9,000 children died in these homes during the time of their operation. So that comes from neglect, malnutrition, and just total disregard. Because, I mean, it's a horrific thing. The child of a woman was called a bastard, which was a very, very derogatory term, and it hung with you all your life. So the children, as well as they grew up, were stigmatized. And then when the woman did leave, she was stigmatized, told to keep her head down. She committed a grave, grave sin. Never let anyone know. We'll sell your child. They actually sold the children abroad. They got money in return for them. Then my mother went to work for the mother of a nun, and then she got pregnant again. Again, I don't know whether it was right because there was a very high disregard, as you know, for women in Ireland. And she came back in again and she had a second child. Now, her first child, John, after my mother had left, had died. And he died of neglect and malnutrition. And he was dumped into a septic tank. That's the respect they had for children of unmarried mothers. They weren't put into a proper graveyard. They weren't treated with any dignity and respect as any sentient being would expect. They were dumped into a septic tank, which is where they put effluent from a toilet. So she had her second child there, and he died at 7 months old, but he doesn't have any legal papers. He doesn't have papers registering his death. There's no reason for his death. So I don't know where he is. I believe he was illegally adopted and sold to America. So my search started in 2012, and I brought the story to Alison O'Reilly. And I was also had been dealing with Catherine Corliss, and I told her of the work of Catherine Corliss. And Alison contacted Catherine. She ran the story, and there wasn't much uptake in Ireland because they know all this thing. They know all this from time immemorial. This is the battle you constantly have, the fight you constantly have, because the people in power, again, as one of our speakers has said, they nearly like a dynasty. It passed from generation to generation. So these people have a lot to hide, and these people have a lot to cover up. So they won't expose anything. So it's a constant job. I mean, I've been on this now almost 9 years. Yeah. So anytime you take on state and church or religion, they're not going to do anything willingly. it becomes a fight. And it's a very hard fight. And I mean, we have daughters and we have grandchildren, and it's imperative on us to keep fighting, you know, whatever way you do it, but it's their life going forward. And I know I'm 65 now, but it's important that's a better word where the women's voice are actually heard, where this will never happen again, where the women will have respect, where the women will allow to be women. Sorry, I'm probably going on, but so again, the fight goes on, and I have the height of respect for everybody. And what I can say is, it was a pleasure to listen to you, and thank you so much. And we'll keep the fight up. Thank you, Sheila.
Anna, thank you so much, Anna. Inspiring again, and I suppose it just goes to show that people have a perception that we in the Western world, you know, have a different set of values and cultures, and it just goes to show that not so long ago, a lot of those were forgotten as well. No. So I'm going to hand over now to Aina, if she's there, and we will hear her story.
Anya, are you there, Anya?
Oh, yeah. Hello, everyone. Nari Rashtrasya Akshi Asti, and it means women is the eye of the nation. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me here for such a great opportunity to interact with such a great panel. Myself, Ania Sheikh, General Secretariat at YAIF. Today, I'm here on behalf of Youth Against Injustice Foundation, which is an organization fighting against injustice and standing firmly against rape, sexual violence, and fake rape allegations. Youth Against Rape is a mission under YAIF wherein we aim to build a new India, a rape-free nation. Working for women issues, we always find that women don't stand up for themselves when they are facing anything wrong. In fact, according to the World Economic Report, it may even take more than 100 years for us to reach a stage of gender equality. But if there are women in politics who raise their voices, it will be a lot faster and easier. So women's political participation has always been a topic of controversy in our society. However, if both men and women participate equally, then the decision taken will always be for the betterment of the nation. This is because through equal participation, we would be able to see the real and positive effect of democracy. When both men and women will be in equal ratio, all issues raised will be given equal priority and justice will be served. India stands 149th in the list of 193 countries in terms of women participation in parliament, which is lower than Rwanda, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nepal, and many more. We also find that women leaders in India raise the economic performance about 1.8% per year, more than male leaders. Still, while political parties encourage female voters, they deny female participation. Facts shows that women political participation never exceeded 12% since independence, and is worse in assembly, which is less than 11% in India. It's high time we all ask ourselves why we are not electing leaders, and we do political parties have the rights to choose gender will lead. Stats shows that areas where men are leading have a higher corruption rate than women, but still democracy have accepted patriarchy as the new normal, and this is not allowing women to lead. The equality of women in politics is necessary, not only for social justice, but as a basic condition for the social, economic, and political development of the country. The male class do not want to share the powers with females politicians, and fact shows that they are about 3 times as likely as female leaders to have criminal charges pending against them. Yet we sit quietly and allow this happen because we do not realize how this is affecting us. The sad part is not just men but women who are leaders are also not taking this seriously. Now the only solution for the political parties is to allow equal ratio for both women and men leaders to ensure equality in political system, because this fight is not about women must rescue themselves, it's about women must rescue their country, right? A woman once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Uh, Along with this, I would also like to talk about some traditional women issues that mostly fall out of political discussion, uh, which is period poverty, or the rights of or the rights a woman has against domestic violence, or how many children are aware of their rights, and these social issues that need to be raised but aren't, because the voice of women in India is suppressed. Talking about menstruation, TV ads, until a few days back in India, they showed the color of blood, blue. Can you imagine? The color shown in the when the color shown in red in animated ad, it's still a taboo in India. But we bleed every month. What is there to hide? We all ask this question. We need change now, and this is the time to be the change. Our founder, Mr. Piyush Monga, started this revolution to fight against injustice. He spread awareness and united the youth all over the country for one vision, which is Rape Mukt Bharat, and it means rape-free India. We at YIF, working as an organization, believe that way to overcome these issues is to awaken the youth and fight together. We as an organization started in 2019, and now we are a team of more than 4,000 of volunteers. According to our Crunch-based research, we are a youth community ranked in first in India and seventh in the world. Today's youth have the power to shake the roots of discrimination and plant the seed of a better tomorrow. So, as our founder says, if you believe in yourself, no matter who says, what says, why says, the belief, I am right, I am standing for the right, and I shall make more people aware and stand for the right, is the key to our inspiration. Raise your voice and take responsibility. Because if we won't, then who will? It's a common saying, right? And thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. You know, fascinating altogether from somebody, as we would say, so young, from my vintage anyway, but a joy to listen to. And more, no doubt we will hear much more from you and your organisation in time to come. I'm now going to hand over to our last speaker before we open for discussion. And Cindy, it's again a pleasure to introduce you.
Thank you, Sheila. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me here. It's a great honor to be here amongst so many strong, independent fighting for human rights across the world. So, yeah, I'm just going to kind of give a brief kind of overview on the issues that my community is facing, and then particularly the women in my community. So I come from a community which is Ireland's Indigenous nomadic community. So we're known in Ireland as Irish travellers. That's what we are known as, which links to our nomadic identity. And I suppose what in collaboration, I suppose what Anna was saying about the Irish state and its dominance, I suppose, over its own people. When we look at my community from the very foundation of the state, the Irish government has denied us our not only our ethnicity and our culture and our identity, but participation in Irish society as a whole. And I suppose if you look at kind of like, as I say, from the foundation of the state, the issues that we have had, I suppose fighting for our identity, fighting for our culture, and fighting for a place in Irish society, but also fighting for, I suppose, accommodation for against health issues. So if you look at the statistics of my community, because of our nomadic identity, nomadism in Ireland has actually been criminalised. So we're not allowed to be nomadic. So the government set up in the late 60s these concrete sites, which are called halting sites. And these sites were originally built in order to get us to settle in one place and to get us used to being in one place, so that we can eventually be moved into houses and our nomadic identity taken away. And I suppose within that, the first Irish government report on us as a community was in 1963, when our Taoiseach at the time stated, and just to bear in mind, I suppose in 1963, we're looking at less than 20 years after, I suppose, the final solution with the Holocaust, and the words of our Taoiseach at the time in 1963 about our community was that there can be no final solution until itinerants are absorbed into Irish society. And when I suppose that was the kind of starting point of government policy towards our community, and the push for us to be settled and to take our nomadic identity away from us. And I suppose from then on, it was the policies that were produced and put in place by our government were policies to deny us our ethnicity and deny us our culture and identity, and to basically to be assimilated and absorbed into Irish society, where it would become that we no longer exist. And I suppose for my community, I suppose the push, we've always kind of like been like where Anna was talking about the mother and baby homes, for example. A lot of my community during the 60s and the 70s, a lot of the children were taken away from our families based solely because of our ethnicity status. And when we look at that, we used to, we have a kind of a figure in our community which is called the cruelty man. And the cruelty man was, it wasn't a physical form of a man coming in, but it was actually combined of the state, the church, and authority figures that were actually coming into our camps and taking children and putting them into industrial schools. And you know, so I suppose when we were traveling along the road, a lot of the times the women and the mothers had to hide their children from the cruelty men that would have been coming. And sometimes the children would be hidden in the back of you know, a horse-drawn wagon, for example. There would be in the cupboard in boxes, you know, covered up in their shawls, just anything to hide the kids from the cruelty men. So I suppose that went right on up into the 70s, and then when we push into the 80s in Ireland, a lot of I suppose there was a bit of an uprising within our community to fight back towards the government policies that were on us. But it was always a peaceful uprising from us. You know, we never took up violence. We were a non-violent community, despite the myths and stereotypes that are there about us and the way Irish society speak about us. You would think that we are some sort of beasts or some sort of different species. And you know, it's just I suppose the Irish government, their policy was to make us, I suppose, into part of the settled community where we would no longer exist. So I suppose not only, I suppose it was our ethnicity being denied, but it was cultural genocide as well that the government had committed on us as a community. So when we look at the results of that today, I suppose as a group, it was always the women of our community that was at the forefront of fighting for human rights issues, and particularly, I suppose, around trying to fight for recognition of our ethnicity status. in Ireland, but also, I suppose, fighting for equality in health and accommodation, and particularly around culturally appropriate accommodation. So I suppose when you look at the statistics of it, when you're looking at how we are racially discriminated within our own country and marginalised and segregated from the rest of the Irish society, you know, it's a huge division in Irish society. There's the settled community and then the traveller community, and it's a total disconnect between both communities, and that's as a result of the government policies and from the top down. And then when you look at, I suppose, the history of Ireland, and I was talking about our uprising, the 1916 uprising, and when we became a republic, and we had men and women that fought for rights in Ireland for that. But when we look at, for my community, we haven't seen any result of those rights, because we look at all of what's happening today. Like, when you look at my community are 7 times more likely to die from suicide than the general population. And then you look at, I suppose, ethnic profiling in the prisons, for example. And like, when you look at the percentage, we are a really small community in Ireland. We're like less than 1%. We're 0.7% of Ireland's population. That's all we are. So we're a tiny community. You would think that the government would find it easy to be able to, I suppose, just to give us basic human rights. There are some of us like that are living in Ireland, women and children, living in overcrowded accommodation with no access to water, no access to sanitation, and no access to electricity. And this is in modern day 2021 Ireland that we're looking at. People wouldn't believe that this is happening in a country like Ireland, but it is happening on a daily basis, where we have children and women getting up in the middle of the night, for example, to get water or to get milk for their baby. They have to walk across a holding site, you know, and they don't have the basic services and access that are human rights, I suppose. And looking at the ethnic profiling of the prison systems, as I was saying, 22% of traveller women are more likely to be in prison than the general population. And when you put that towards, like, when we're only 0.7% of the population, and then for 20% of the female Irish prison population to be made up of travellers, it just shows the disproportionate numbers that are in. And those women that are in there are in there for petty crimes, for fines, for example, for taxes, but also for different things like for example, as I said, the criminalisation of nomadism, where they're pulling up and parked on the side of the road, for example. They can be given a court notice to be moved on, and if they don't move on within a specific amount of time, they can be fined, and then if they don't pay the fine, they end up being in prison. So basically, they're in prison because of who they are, just on that basis, you know. And there's no justification for it. But also, I suppose, when you're looking at the women in our community, and you're looking at the education statistics, for example, only 13% of girls in my community finish second level education, just 13%. And that boils down to a lot of the discrimination that the children face within the school system itself. When you look at the Irish school curriculum, at the moment, there is no traveller history or culture included on the curriculum. All the history books that are written about Ireland excludes our community. There is no representation for us at all. When you're looking at even, I suppose, when you're looking at the top levels of government, like our parliament at the moment, 22% of our parliament are women, which is very low in itself. But even within that, there is no representation of my community within that. You look at the unemployment rates in my community, over 80% are unemployed. And there was a survey done there a couple of years ago, which stated that over 80% of Irish employers would not employ somebody from my community. So it's kind of gone back and forth in a circle. So I suppose those are kind of the main issues. And I suppose when you're looking at main issue, kind of what's coming onto that now, is the issues around COVID. So I suppose, as we all know, ethnic minorities across the world are disproportionately affected by the pandemic. And when we look at women particularly are affected by it, particularly around the caring roles that women are forced into. But also when you look at, I suppose here in Ireland with my community, we are twice as likely to get COVID. But also when you look at the conditions of how COVID thrives, when you're looking at overcrowded conditions, for example, there's a halting site here in Ireland that was considered to be nearly one of the worst camps in Europe, and there is over 100 children on that site, for example, and there is very limited access to water and sanitation. There is no flush toilets on there. There is just a portaloo toilets, and there is lack of electricity as well, where they have to use generators. So I suppose just to kind of finish up on that, I suppose looking at kind of the issues, the health issues, I suppose it's really complex situation here in Ireland when it comes to my community, because it's many issues intertwined and intertangled and interlinked with each other. But it all boils down to, I suppose, the fact of government policy and denial of our culture and our identity. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. I know we've run over time, so I'm going to hand swiftly over to Tara at this stage, just to kind of see if there is time to take some questions, because I think it's been utterly fascinating. I know I'd like to listen to another hour, but I'm sure you have other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheila. I have to say that my own personal response is I'm alarmed by what I've heard. And there are a lot of comments coming through from social media, some of which are quite aggressive actually against some of our speakers. But I think that this has shown us that the exclusion and dehumanization of women and ethnic minorities is a problem that isn't religious, because we're all from different religious backgrounds. And this seems to be, it's a cultural issue that we have in society. And the epidemic of misogyny is as pervasive really as COVID-19, and clearly rooted in colonialism. I think that I would like to open, if I may, if the panelists, if we could have a couple of minutes, if I may open, because there are some women who have joined our forum who couldn't, they couldn't present openly because their lives are at risk also. But I would like to give them a moment to speak. Firstly, if I could hand over to M for a moment, who is a Hong Konger. And if you would like to take the floor for a moment or two, I would really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Tara, and I'm very honored to be offered an opportunity to contribute to this forum, and it's been heartbreaking to hear all the experiences shared by all the panelists, and I learned so much from everyone. Thank you so much. If I may be able to share a little bit of the experiences from Hong Kong, and it's really, since I can only really speak about the experiences of the of what Hong Kong has been like for women since the protest has started in 2019, because I think we witnessed a lot of the gender-based violence that we never had really dreamt of in previous times. And I took a lot of what you have said about violence against women. It resonated so much with me, because similar things that happened to Hong Kong people, to Hong Kong women. I want to actually just comment on a few, just outline a few kind of headline cases that had came through. So, for example, there was an 18-year-old girl who was forcibly dragged into a police station on the 27th of September in 2019 by 4 white police officers, taken into a recognition room with single direct reflection gases, where she was forced to perform oral sex and then raped by these 4 white police who didn't use a condom and didn't mask their face. The girl was found pregnant and then she received abortion surgery shortly after that. The police say that they didn't have any footage of the girl being taken into police custody in the police station. The girl has to go through, how can I say that, go through representation by a very famous human rights lawyer practice, but they couldn't get, she had medical records by brave kind of healthcare professionals who could stand by her record of what she had, but they could not get any recourse to justice at all. And that's just one particular case. And I think that there was also another 19-year-old pregnant woman who was less than 6 weeks from her due date, who was arrested on the 7th of October in 2019 for unlawful assembly and detained in custody. And there was another pregnant woman who was basically pushed, and her amino acid flowed out from herself when she was being pushed by white police. And there is another one in which there was a pregnant woman who was with her husband, who was again forcibly pushed onto the ground by the police, despite the fact that the crowd was actually trying to prevent that happening. And what the police had done was to actually charge one of the women who was trying to prevent the white police pushing the pregnant woman. That woman herself got charged. And there were also kind of sexual harassment that had happened while women were in police custody, including a very famous case whereby the woman Sonia Ng, who is from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, she became a cause célèbre because she was brave enough to kind of disclose her identity while there was a student forum at her university. And she disclosed the fact that she was sexually assaulted by police while she was being questioned, when she was literally at a passerby at a particularly gruesome police incident on the 31st of August in Hong Kong, whereby police were rampaging through a metro station looking for people to beat up, and she just happened to be there. So there were, I suppose, there are a lot more stories, and I'm not doing justice, because there were also a case of a 45-year-old woman who was basically found naked in basically there have been lots of instances of naked corpses in Hong Kong that was found during the period of the protests. For example, there was a 3-month period whereby 7 naked corpses were found, and they were all being classed as non-suspicious by the police, even though they're all naked. And the coroner at the time was saying that if it was women and their clothes were disheveled or naked, they should be actually classed as suspicious, and there should have been proper investigation. But the police were all saying that they were non-suspicious, so these were actual corpses that were being found. And all I wanted to say was that it had been very shocking to Hong Kongers who were not used to having this kind of onslaught of kind of gender-based violence against women, because that was not what people were used to. And one of the things that people found hard to reconcile is that there are women's rights organizations in Hong Kong, but they were not speaking up. And it was similar to what Kim Sharif has said in her presentation when she talked about the regime paying women to speak at the UN, trying to gloss over or trying to present a good case to at the international front. So you have these kind of pro-regime women's organizations being being asked to represent Hong Kong at the UN, and completely glossing over all the violence that had happened. I suppose one question I would like to ask the panel, or to see if it could be a possibility, was that one of the few inspiring things that had happened during the protest movement was that we had a rally called Me Too Rally, whereby people can come forward to talk about the sexual abuse by the police. That happened in 2019. And what was interesting was that it wasn't only women who spoke at this rally, it was also men as well, because men had also similarly reported being harassed kind of on a sexual kind of basis by the police while they were in custody, and police had openly been recorded as saying that they would rape boys, you know, the way threatened them to be raping them. So I'm wondering, because also what you had said, Tara, at the beginning of this forum was that there are also male feminists as well. There are men who are also pro women's rights, and I'm wondering if there could be space for more solidarity and kind of fight for gender justice across the gender spectrum.
Thank you very much indeed for that. I think that what has been most revealing in this session is the extraordinary diversity that has come to the table. And I really believe that we have achieved what the fundamental aim was of this group coming together, and that was to reveal how similar our situations are as sisters all over the world, and to really clearly express our empathy with each other. There's obviously a need for a transnational women's party for reform. I know that there have been many people who have commented about the depth and breadth of the speakers and all of the first-hand experiences that people have had with regards to misogyny. I'd just like to see if perhaps anybody from the forum may have a question that they would like to pose to the group before we leave. I do have a question from one of my colleagues, Dr. Sarah Campbell, who has asked if the panel about the impacts that the pandemic has had on women in particular and their continued inclusion in workplace that reduces and discounts reproduction and the domestic sphere in favor of productivity. How we can address these injustices, particularly intersectional injustices, and ensure diversity in the workplace in 5 to 10 years from now. This is particularly pertinent for those in precarious employment, which I think is everyone at this stage. Those precariously employed will find it more difficult to be involved in social justice work, given the hostility to it by some institutions, which again brings us to the question of gongos, who are set up to be mouthpieces and spokespeople for the governments who are perpetrating these crimes against women and communities. Are there any closing remarks that anyone would like to make? I would really like to have somebody maybe step in and have a moment to assist with closing. Is there anything anyone would like to contribute? Anna, go ahead. If you'd like to unmute yourself there for a moment, please.
I just have to say it was so enlightening, and it was so, I kind of got a little bit thrown off balance because I was going to talk about the tune babies, but then the breadth and the depth and the diversity, but there still is a common theme and a common thread. It's the position of women in society and how powerful they are. The lady from Sub-Sahara, you know, the women coming out on the streets, and again, all the women, but just to show the video and to show the, and to hear there from Hong Kong, there is a common theme, because in war situations or in any kind of threatening situations, women's sexuality is used against them and sexual violence is perpetrated on them, and it's as simple as that. And that is very, very frightening as a woman, and it's something that has to stop. We're over 52% of the population of the world, and we do have a common thread running between us. We all have different religions, we all have different belief systems. I don't have a belief system, you know, as the other girl said, she's an atheist, but we're all women, we all bear children, we all love our children, our families, we fight for what's right. And as Kim said there, I mean, the women that she referred to back from her history and how strong they were and how they stood up. And this is going back into ancient history. And all I can say, it was a pleasure to be with everybody tonight. I found it very, 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 very interesting and very, very, such august company. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, indeed, it was very enriching indeed. And thank you all for participating. Mema has said that women's solidarity is very important to fight for our mutual rights. And I'm certain that we will all be able to come together in another forum, hopefully one that is geographically closer, that we could be together without this being online with cameras. And I really applaud and encourage all of you in your work. I'm certain that we'll be in touch in coming days to recap on this session. And for any feedback that anyone would like to give from our online forums, please do contact us. And we will endeavour to answer your questions and to continue to deliver your messages of support to all of these extraordinary women whom I'm so proud of for their participation this evening. Thank you all very much indeed. God bless you all. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.